Hello, everyone, and on behalf of the Nordics, welcome. I'm Lotta Jessen from the Finnish Consulate General in New York, and I'll be guiding you through today's program. We have a wonderful event planned for you and are excited to have you join us. First, you will hear a joint greeting from the five Nordic Consul Generals. Following the welcome message, Ms. Stephanie Margolis from New York City Climate Action Alliance will give her keynote speech on how New York City is fighting the climate change. After that, you will see videos showcasing the five Nordic capitals: Copenhagen, Helsinki, Oslo, Reykjavik, and Stockholm. The panel discussion featuring Nordic climate experts and moderated by Mr. Tatu Leinonen will begin directly after the videos. After the panel, we have reserved some time for questions from the audience. Next to the window showing the live stream, you can find a chat box. Please feel free to post your questions there, both for the panelists and our keynote speaker. They will be addressed at the end of the panel discussion. But now, a joint greeting from all the five Nordic Consul Generals.
Welcome to our event, Blueprints for a Better World, Nordic Roadmaps to Climate-Friendly Cities. This is an official side event to the Climate Week, which took place in New York City last week.
We are excited to have you join us and hear a Nordic perspective on this important issue, which affects all of us, from government officials to businesses and citizens.
Today, the capital cities of the Nordic countries, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Oslo, Reykjavik, and Stockholm, come together to discuss our climate goals and how they will seek to achieve those targets. And we also hear from the great city of New York.
The five countries of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden form the Nordics. We are used to working together and believe that in the battle against climate change, cooperation is crucial.
We're all committed to making our cities, countries, and globe more climate friendly. And we hope that today's event will leave you with some new ideas and inspiration.
Next, Ms. Stephanie Margolis, the Executive Director from New York City Climate Action Alliance, will tell us how they are tackling the climate challenges in New York City and inspiring others to join them.
Thank you, Lotta, for the introduction. I want to thank the Consulate General of Finland for organizing this great event. I'm excited to be here today to discuss how New York City is fighting climate change and the importance of collaboration to achieving ambitious climate goals. As we learned from the recent IPCC report released last month, devastating impacts of global warming are now unavoidable. Humans have already heated the planet by roughly 1.1 degrees Celsius, largely by burning fossil fuel for energy, and the consequences can be felt across the globe. This summer alone, heat waves have killed hundreds of people in the United States and Canada, floods have devastated Germany and China, and wildfires have raged out of control in Siberia, Turkey, and Greece. Locally, New York City is also feeling the impacts of climate change, and these effects disproportionately burden the city's most vulnerable populations and communities. Hurricane Sandy ravaged New York back in 2012 and opened our eyes to the devastating consequences of stronger, wetter, and more frequent storms. Sandy resulted in 44 deaths, inflicted an estimated $19 billion in lost economic activity, damaged nearly 70,000 residential units, temporarily displaced thousands of residents, and left hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers without power and with limited access to food, drinking water, healthcare, and other critical services. More recently, this summer, New York City surpassed its previous record for the rainiest hour recorded in history, not once, but twice. As the remnants of Hurricane Ida swept over New York City on September 1st, Central Park recorded 3.15 inches of rain in a single hour, smashing the previous 1-hour record of 1.94 inches set less than 2 weeks before during Tropical Storm Henry. The sudden burst of rain paralyzed the city, with cascades of water pouring into subway stations and shutting down much of the system for hours. We have an obligation to act now to stop things from getting even worse and prevent the most harrowing future. And New York is once again at the forefront of climate mitigation efforts with the goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. Its motto is to take action to not only stop climate change, but also to improve the quality of life for people in the city right here and right now. To achieve this goal, New York is employing a multi-pronged approach by focusing on waste management, transportation, and its buildings. One priority is to reduce the 14 million tons of trash that the city sends to landfills every year. This fall, curbside composting is coming back after a hiatus caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Food scraps and other organics make up 1/3 of the trash New Yorkers throw away, so composting can make the city more sustainable by reducing waste sent to landfills and creating clean, renewable energy to heat and power homes. The New York City Housing Authority is also exploring the implementation of food waste disposers across its portfolio of nearly 170,000 units to shift trash from solid waste to wastewater. And in 2019, the city established commercial waste zones to create a safe and efficient commercial waste collection system that advances the city's Green New Deal and zero waste goals. Another priority is to expand sustainable transportation modes, public transit, walking, and biking in New York City to limit greenhouse gas emissions and ensure that New Yorkers have a lot of ways to get around the city. The city aims to reduce traffic congestion, increase bus performance, and modernize the subway system, which enables New Yorkers to not rely on a car. To do so, New York City has proposed the implementation of congestion pricing in partnership with the state, although this has been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. New York City also announced plans to install 28 miles of new and improved busways and bus lanes just in 2021 alone, along with 30 miles of protected bike lanes, adding to the over 130 miles of protected bike lanes that currently exist. More recently, New York has focused on creating infrastructure to support the electrification of the transportation system and EVs in particular. In an urban environment where residents live in multifamily units without the ability to install personal EV chargers, a network of publicly available curbside electric vehicle charging stations is needed for the adoption of EVs in New York City. That's why it was very exciting in June of this year when the New York City Department of Transportation cut the ribbon on its first curbside Level 2 electric vehicle charger in the Bronx as part of its pilot program to install curbside EV charging stations for public use. This program will help increase the percentage of EVs purchased in New York City, which currently comprise only 15,000 vehicles out of the nearly 2 million vehicles registered throughout the 5 boroughs. Perhaps the city's biggest priority is to get carbon out of its building stocks. And this is the topic that I personally am most passionate and excited about. New York skyline is iconic. It's recognizable throughout the world, and it symbolizes all that New York City can accomplish. But New York's buildings also account for over 2/3 of the city's greenhouse gas emissions, which contribute to the far-ranging environmental, health, and economic impacts that I described before. To tackle emissions from the sector head-on, New York passed the Climate Mobilization Act in 2019, the largest climate solution put forth by any city in the world. The Climate Mobilization Act consists of a slate of climate laws designed to dramatically cut carbon from buildings in New York City, with Local Law 97 as its centerpiece. Local Law 97 is a first-of-its-kind legislation in the United States that sets a cap on carbon emissions from buildings. It takes effect in 2024, and it becomes increasingly stringent thereafter. There are currently 2 ways to comply with Local Law 97. Building owners may reduce their carbon intensity through retrofits or fuel switching, or they may use deductions via the purchase of renewable energy credits that are generated in New York City, or offsets, although offsets are capped at 10% of a building's carbon cap. The city is also exploring the potential of carbon trading as another compliance pathway, and should a building owner not meet its carbon cap, they will face significant fines for non-compliance. To support compliance with Local Law 97, the city has relaunched the New York City Accelerator. The Accelerator provides free personalized guidance to private building owners across the 5 boroughs to make cost-saving energy efficiency upgrades. Guidance for the program comes in the form of educating owners on regulations facing their buildings, making connections to contractors, providing financial and technical assistance, and offering trainings. The city has also created case studies that highlight successes and help prove the business case necessary to scale retrofits citywide. New York City has also launched property assessed clean energy financing, otherwise known as PACE financing, that allows building owners to borrow money to make improvements to their property that reduce utility costs, energy consumption, and greenhouse gas emissions. Unlike conventional financing, loans provided through PACE are repaid in installments through a charge on the property's tax bill. In addition to Local Law 97, New York City also requires large buildings to annually benchmark their energy and water consumption, conduct an energy audit and recommission its building systems every 10 years, and post an energy efficiency grade. These regulations have created a great repository of data that provide insights into the best energy efficiency measures to implement, and also create a friendly competition between buildings who can compare their grades to nearby and similar buildings. New York City will soon also require buildings to meet the most current energy code for any renovation project and require commercial buildings to install sub-meters for commercial tenants. While the city has set a visionary goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 and has implemented and is working on exciting steps to achieve carbon neutrality, the visionary goal requires an all-hands-on-deck approach. We must all contribute to fighting climate change, and many are already doing so. Nonprofits are stepping up. For years, cycling advocates and nonprofits have fought for a protected bike lane on the Brooklyn Bridge as part of a grander vision for safer streets and low-carbon transportation in the city. 2 weeks ago, it finally opened. Nonprofits are bringing environmental equity and justice to the forefront to ensure that the transition to a zero-carbon future is done in a way that is just and equitable. And my nonprofit has teamed up with 2 other nonprofits to decarbonize leased office spaces by fostering collaboration between building owners, tenants, brokers, lawyers, and sustainability consultants, and ensuring that these stakeholders have access to the right information at the right time to make deep energy retrofits of commercial spaces the industry standard. The private sector is also contributing. As part of Climate Week, many companies have committed to new ESG goals. Salesforce declared itself a net zero company, and Unilever announced a Climate Promise program for their suppliers to demonstrate their shared values and commitment to reducing the greenhouse gas footprint of their value chains. Vendors are frequently innovating new technological solutions across waste management, transportation, water efficiency, and other areas. And key actors from the real estate, construction, engineering, and design community have teamed up in a public-private partnership as part of the Empire Building Challenge to change the status quo to retrofitting tall buildings. The goal of the Empire Building Challenge is to harness the commitments from preeminent real estate developers and unleash the creativity of leading R&D teams, architects, engineers, and manufacturers from all over the world to transform the building stock into the buildings that we need for the future. The state is also joining in on the fun. Just last week, our governor announced 2 major green infrastructure projects to power New York City. The projects will bring wind and solar power from upstate New York and hydropower from Canada into New York City by investing in new transmission lines. This greening of the grid helps the state meet its targets it set for itself under the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, known as the CLCPA. And greening the grid, coupled with the electrification of buildings in New York City, also position building owners to comply with Local Law 97 and our city to meet the principles of the Paris Agreement. So I'll wrap by saying this. The world is facing a moment of climate change reckoning. New York City is serving as a climate leader to other cities by setting ambitious climate goals. We cannot fail to meet these goals. It is just not an option. So we all must work together and lend our resources and our skills to mitigating climate change and climate change impacts. Together, we have the technical know-how, we have the policy know-how, and we have the passion to scale up climate solutions. Together, we have the capacity to drive deep emission reductions across every sector of our city and the world. Together, we can curb global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We must act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that inspiring speech. Now to get everyone in a Nordic mindset, please watch the following videos featuring the Nordic capitals, their nature, opportunities, innovations, and the people. After the videos, Mr. Tatu Leinonen, Specialist of Climate and Nature Solutions at the Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra, will introduce the panelists and start the panel discussion.
Copenhagen is everywhere. It's connected to anywhere, yet it's a city without borders. It's more than just a city. It's a feeling, a pulse, pure stamina. A network that connects people. Copenhagen is more than the home of fairy tales. It's a fairy tale itself. Its own little mermaid. It's a complete culinary delight. It's a city that's built on curiosity, on vision, and the place where we don't see limits, just possibilities. Few cities are more vibrant than Copenhagen. And few offer the same quiet, the same existential life.
You encourage me to be strong and smart. I am prepared for everything that the future holds. Because of you, my friends and I learn to respect the world and grow into responsible adults.
You make me happy. I've got everything I need, a nice place to live, and a life full of opportunities around me. You ask me what I think and respect my views. You keep me on the right track. I feel safe when I'm with you.
You enable things to run smoothly. With your support, me and my business can thrive.
Oslo blir grønnere, vi har elektriske ferger, vi har elektriske busser, elektriske sykler, og nå også elektriske anleggsplasser. Bymiljøetaten er byggherre for Norges første pilotprosjekt for utslippsfri anleggsplass. Og det betyr at vi bruker elektriske maskiner på plassen, og dieselmaskiner er ikke velkomne. En stor del av utslippene i Oslo kommer fra anleggsplasser. Og Oslo kommune har mål om at innen 2025 skal dette reduseres betraktelig. De elektriske maskinene gjør den samme jobben som de andre maskinene, men de bråker mindre og har null utslipp. Oslo kommune ønsker å få til en endring. Vi tar det ansvaret vi har for å endre markedet, slik at vi kan få en grønnere by. Vi er stolte for å være med på en omstilling av hele bygg- og anleggsbransjen. I dette prosjektet har vi samlet gode erfaringer som vi kan ta med oss videre, og vi gleder oss til fortsettelsen.
Good morning and good day. My name is Tatu Leinonen, and it's a great pleasure to be here with all of you today and to act as moderator for the panel discussion. At first, I would like to thank all the previous speakers, Stephanie Margolis especially, and all the speakers via video for their contribution to the event. And I think the points raised provide an excellent basis for us to go forward with the panel discussion. The Climate Week NYC gathered leaders from many parts of the world and many sectors to showcase leading climate solutions and action and to discuss how to move faster. As we know, there is need for urgent action and transformation if we want to achieve the global climate target in line with the Paris Agreement. The good news is changing the course is still possible and change is going forward indeed on many sectors. This is the context for our conversation today. And next, we will zoom in on the approaches and climate action of the Nordic capitals. And it is great to have speakers from all 5 Nordic capitals with us today. Before going to the panel, however, a technical note. So at the end of the event, we will have some time for questions and comments from the audience. Please write your questions in the chat box. And there's no need to wait until the Q&A part. So we warmly welcome and encourage everybody to write comments and questions already during the panel. At the end, we will then address some of them within the time frame that we have. But yeah, without further ado, let's go to the first round of the panel then. So as a first question, I'd ask all panelists to introduce themselves briefly and also share the main elements of their city's climate work in a nutshell. And I'd suggest we start with alphabetical order according to cities' names. So start with Copenhagen, then go to Helsinki, Oslo, Reykjavik, and Stockholm. So first over to Lykke and Copenhagen. We made a deal with the panelists that we can go by first name basis. So Copenhagen and Lykke, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Lykke Leonardsen, and I'm the Program Director for our Resilient and Sustainable City Solutions program in Copenhagen. Copenhagen is very often ranked high on the various international lists for being one of the most livable cities in the world. But we also want to be the first capital in the world to become carbon neutral. We've set a deadline, 2025, and that is only 4 years from now. And we need to get there without losing quality of life and economic potential. So it's about switching from fossil fuels to renewables when we are producing energy. A thing that is helped by the fact that 98% of all Copenhageners are actually connected to our district energy system. We also need to take a different approach to waste. We have been creating energy by waste, by incinerating waste for decades, but that's not the future. So now we are working towards more circularity, reusing materials and using bio-waste for creating biogas, etc. So only a small fraction of the waste will be incinerated in the future. Mobility is another big issue. We need to make it easy for Copenhageners to change to biking and public transportation. And if you come to Copenhagen during rush hour, it is bike rush hour, because more than 50% of all Copenhageners use their bike every day to go to school or to work. And we do not use it because we are climate jerks. We use it because it's the easiest and most convenient way to get around the city. But going carbon neutral is not enough. Danes and Copenhageners are amongst the worst greenhouse gas emitters in the world. And that is why the Copenhagen politicians have just recently decided to start planning to reduce consumer-based emissions. So by 2035, they have to be down by 50%. This will be difficult because we have to work with citizens to get them to reduce their consumptions or change the way they consume. We will have to create new partnerships with businesses, schools, and institutions to make all of this happen. So if you invite me back in 2 or 3 years' time, maybe I can tell you a little bit more about how we're going to do it. And while we're working hard on emissions, we also have our eyes set on climate change. It is hitting hard on cities, as we also heard from the keynote speaker in New York. Copenhagen has an ambitious plan for adapting to climate change, managing a 100-year cloudburst and protecting the city from storm surges, but at the same time using the opportunity to create a greener and more livable city. So our climate work has been an inspiration to other cities. So I invite you to come to Copenhagen. We love sharing our work with other cities. Thank you.
Thank you. And next to Helsinki.
Hi, and thank you. So we agreed that we go on the first name basis, but actually it does not help you a lot because I have such a difficult first name that even Finnish people, they can't make it right. So my name is Kaisa-Reeta Koskinen, and I'm a head of climate unit here in city of Helsinki. And city of Helsinki at the moment has the target to be climate neutral by 2035. And basically it means that we want to cut our emissions by 80% comparing to the year 1990. And so far we have come down about 1/3, so 33%. We are already going on the right direction, but of course, there is still many things we have to do, and we only have less than 15 years left, so we have to speed up. But I think that we are doing right things at the moment. So more than 50% of the emissions, direct emissions here in Helsinki, they are coming from heating. And I'm a big, fan of simple solutions. And I think that as almost 60% of the emissions are coming from heating, of course, then we have to put like 60% of our focus and the resources on the heating problem. And there is basically two big things we have to do. We have to clean up the production of the heating, and then we have to focus on how much we are using to heat. So it's basically energy efficiency where we have to focus. And we have big things and big measures ongoing on both of those things and both on those topics. Then about 25% of the emissions are coming from traffic. And, similarly, there is the two big things we can do. We can make a car producing less emissions, and then we can make people to drive less. And of course, it's a little bit more complicated stories because on the heating we have more direct mandates as a city, but on the traffic we have to act, not so directly, but we have to use more like a smart ways to make to affect how the people are acting on those things. Then we are now also focusing on the indirect emissions, and there we have two focus areas. It is the construction, both constructing on the buildings and then the infrastructure construction. And then public procurement is a big thing. Actually, the city of Helsinki is the biggest public procurer in Finland, so we have a lot of opportunities to reduce emissions by making a clever public procurement. But that's basically, what in a big picture, what we are doing here. Of course, there are, hundreds and hundreds of ways and small things, I hope I can share with you later on.
Excellent, thank you. And next we will go to Oslo, and Audun, please.
Thank you. Let me follow up with another difficult Nordic name. My name is Audun Garberg. I'm with the Climate Agency in Oslo, and we were set up to provide technical support and policy advice on climate measures to the city government and to all other city agencies. And we also work closely with the NGOs, the private sectors, research institutions, and so on around climate work in Oslo. So Oslo's target is to reduce direct emissions by 95% by 2030, as well as to reduce energy consumption, become a climate resilient city, preserve and increase natural carbon storage in vegetation, and reduce indirect emissions. To reduce our direct emissions, we focus mainly on three sectors that combined represents about 90% of Oslo's emissions. It's road transport, construction machinery, and waste incineration. So our main measure is to electrify transport and construction machinery. And just to mention that one of the successes later this year, the number of fully electric private cars will surpass the number of diesel cars in Oslo. The market share is now close to 70% fully electric cars. We also work, of course, to increase recycling of waste and to realize a carbon capture and storage project at our biggest waste incineration plant in Oslo. I would finally also like to mention that we've developed a climate budget as a tool to implement and follow up on measures to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. The climate budget is integrated in the financial budget, where all measures and policy instruments to mitigate greenhouse gases are listed, together with the budget allowance and not least what city department is responsible for implementation of the measure. And this way we ensure that both the city government and the city council discuss climate mitigation measures and decide on them every year. And we also use the financial budget that is very well known to all city agencies to allocate, to report, and to follow up on the measures.
Excellent, thank you. Next, we will go to Reykjavik and Hrönn, please.
Yes, hi. I'm sharing the same as with my other Nordic colleagues, that my name is hard to pronounce. But I'm called Hrönn. It's like you're pronouncing it like run in running. Well, I'm working as an expert at the municipality of Reykjavik City, and I have been here for almost 10 years now, working on climate issues. Reykjavik City is the capital of Iceland, and that is an island in the North Atlantic Ocean, in the middle between United States and Europe. We are, well, a small population in a very large country. We are around 350,000, and 1/3 or 135,000 live in Reykjavik. Well, in Iceland, we have been experienced the effects of climate change. There are, of course, rising temperature, but we also see it very visual that our glaciers are melting and disappearing, actually. And we have experience of increasing rain as well. Reykjavik is located by the sea, and of course we will be experiencing rising sea levels. But maybe what is the most serious and worrisome is the effects on ocean acidification due to CO2 emissions, because that could have actually severe effects on the ocean wildlife, and thus to one of our largest business sector in Iceland, that is fisheries. But in Reykjavik, in the city, we aim to be carbon neutral by 2040, and our main task or challenge in the city is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, mostly by the private car. It's about 2/3 of all of the emission, scope 1 emission in the city. And of course, as we are an island, we import most of our goods for consumption and production. So that is consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions that we also have to work on. But we are lucky to have geothermal heat and hydropower as well. So our energy use for household and production and businesses have very low greenhouse gas emissions. And also, as you saw in the video, we are lucky to have geothermal heat to keep us and our public swimming pools warm in the winter.
Very good, thank you. And next we will go to Stockholm. Björn, please.
Hello, my name is Björn Hugosson. I work as Chief Climate Officer in the Stockholm City Hall. It's my job to make sure that we have policies in place and to coordinate everything around climate mitigation in our organization. We started our climate mitigation work back in the 1990s, so there is a long history. The total emissions have now been reduced by about 50%, and we are now down at around 2 tons per capita of CO2 emissions. Our long-term goal is to become fossil-free and climate positive by the year 2040. And the short-term goal is to reach 1.5 tons per capita by 2023. Main achievements in this is the decarbonization of the heating grid. We have a district heating that covers about 80% of the buildings. And by replacing coal and oil with incinerated biomass and household waste together with heat pumps, we have managed to decarbonize this almost entirely. We have also addressed the transport sector. We have introduced biofuels in the form of biomethane, which is produced from sewage and food waste. That is an example of using residual materials in the municipality to create something, a solution for the future. There is also a congestion charge in place since 15 years back. Although controversial when it was introduced, it is now embraced by most people and it reduces travel times and emissions. We have a program for electrification together with the utility industry, and next year we will hopefully reach 4,000 public charging spots in the city. The market for EVs is booming, although we are lagging behind Oslo a bit. They have impressive numbers, really. Next steps will be to work with carbon sinks within the city borders. We are exploring 2 different technologies. One is to produce biochar, that's charcoal made from green waste from parks and gardens, and put it back into the ground. And another technology is carbon capture and storage from the bioenergy plants. We have 2 pilots in place, and we are now exploring business models how to scale this and bring it to full scale. One important lesson from our side is from the policy aspect of this transition, that it is really necessary to have both carrots and sticks in the transition, not just carrots, because it's very expensive. The sticks could be carbon tax that we have in Sweden since 30 years back. It is a way of combining a push on reducing the fossil energy, combining it with the possibility to apply for climate investment funding, which can be done by cities. So that was in short and in essence the story from Stockholm. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you everybody for the first round. It seems like there was a great journey through all of the areas that cities typically face. And there's a lot of resonation with the examples from the New York City too, at least in my opinion, that we heard in the beginning. So thank you. And let's go forward to the next question and a little bit about the theme of cooperation. As we heard in the beginning, we need all hands on deck. This is the type of emergency situation. And I'd assume all of us would agree that cooperation is certainly one of the key elements to successful climate work, whether we look at mitigation or adaptation. We need more or less everybody to move in the same direction. So I wonder if you could share your views on what approaches and tools the cities can use to inspire stakeholders to really engage in the work at the local or regional level. And if you could share some concrete experiences from your cities. And let's change the order a little bit. So we can start with Helsinki this time and then go to Oslo, Reykjavik, Stockholm, and then Copenhagen will be the last for this round. So, Kaisa-Reetta, the mic and screen are yours.
Okay, thank you. As I already said, the heating and energy efficiency is a very big thing for us here in Helsinki, because almost 60% of the direct emission is coming from heating. And of course, when you are increasing energy efficiency, there are a lot of stakeholders. There are construction companies, there are renovation companies, there are public building owners, but there are also private building owners who you have to work together. And when we are speaking about the new buildings, it's here in Helsinki, it's quite easy because Helsinki owns most of the land here in the city. So if you want to build something here, you have to rent a piece of land from the city. And on the rental agreements, we can require certain kind of things. And at the moment, we are, for example, requiring that all the buildings built here in Helsinki, they have to be in the best A energy efficiency class. So they have to be zero energy buildings, basically. But of course, before we can set that kind of requirements, we have to cooperate with the construction companies. So we are having debates. We are working together with universities to make all kind of reports and studying that is it possible and what does it cost to the people and the residents and that kind of things. But in that area, we also have a power just to mandate. And I believe that, sometimes a very good way to make a market to move forward is just to mandate. It is, sometimes good to use a stick, and not only carrots. But then with the private house owners who are owning their residential buildings, and in here in Finland it is housing association basically who operates most of the buildings. And when you own your apartment, you are a shareholder of the housing association. So the residential buildings, they are owned by the people who are living in the buildings. And of course there are a lot of shareholders who are not expert on the buildings and are not expert on the energy efficiency, and with those people, we don't have that kind of mandate. We cannot just force them to do energy renovations in their buildings. And of course in there we have to collaborate a little bit different way. And a couple of years ago we ran a study. We wanted to know why the energy renovations are not progressing, because here in Finland it really makes sense to make energy renovations. You are able to save money, they pay back. It makes economical sense to renovate your building, and still we don't see that kind of a big renovation waves. And it turned out that it is very, very difficult for the lay people, for the normal people to know what to do and how to start. And that's why, we started an Energy Renaissance program. So basically we hired a group of engineers working for the city, and the engineers at the moment are working together with the housing associations and with the local communities to help housing association to run through the renovations. And so it's basically, a different kind of problems. They need a different kind of solutions, and we just cannot, collaborate on the one way. So it depends on many things. But on both of those, cases, we have seen a very good results, and we have been able to make that kind of a real progress. So actually during the summertime, we had to increase the number of the engineers because the service is so popular. So people are very, very, interested, and they are very happy with that kind of, a professional and independent help. So it's probably one of the success stories, what we have done here.
Great. Thank you. Then moving on to Oslo, and I would also remind everybody to keep their answers rather concise, so we will have time for everybody. Okay, Oslo, the screen and mic are yours.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to mention one initiative Oslo has feel that has been very successful. We started about 10 years ago a network called Business for Climate. So we invited the local business community and regional businesses to sign up that they will reduce their own emissions and contribute towards Oslo's greenhouse gas emission goals. And we use this network to share experiences, discuss concrete actions and so on. And it's also been a useful meeting place for businesses that are forward-leaning. And one example of how the city has used this network is, we're planning to introduce zero-emission zones to reduce emissions from transportation in Oslo. So we've used this network to discuss with the local businesses how to implement this zone. And of course, not everyone is very happy with the suggestion, but I think everyone is really happy that they are able to participate in these discussions, and it's really been useful for the city to get the input from the local businesses on how to implement this in a way that works for them, and it's also a way to make them prepared that this will actually be implemented in a few years' time. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Then over to Ran in Reykjavik. Please,
yes.
The mic is yours.
Yes, thank you. I'm thinking about the cooperation on a local level in Reykjavik and nearby. We have had similar declaration as Oslo had with the businesses, so that is very good thing and to do with businesses to have some kind of declaration. But what I wanted to talk about is maybe a little bit different thing, because we are a small population and maybe something to learn from that. There are 135,000 living in Reykjavik. But if we have the Greater Reykjavik area, we are around 200,000. And we are 6 municipalities within the area and very close to each other. And therefore, it has been helpful to work together on infrastructure matters. Like we have been having a company that is co-owned on public transportation. And then we only have one system for all the inhabitants in the municipalities nearby. So you can take the bus from Hafnarfjörður municipality to downtown Reykjavik just within one system. We just recently sat together and are preparing a climate policy for all of the 6 municipalities. So that is a kind of working scene for the municipalities nearby. But it was also helpful to have how can you say the touch base on the infrastructure, both on public transport, because transport is the most challenging greenhouse gas emissions in Reykjavik and just as the other municipalities. But then we also have a common infrastructure on waste. This is just an example of how local level cooperation can be made.
Excellent, thank you. And next to Stockholm. So Björn, the screen and mic are yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I would also like to describe the business network that we are working with in Stockholm. It is called the Climate Pact, and it gathers around 300 companies, and they all have signed agreements that they will follow the same long-term targets as the city to become fossil-free. And this network, it comes with several advantages. One is that we could have gatherings where we exchange experiences. Startup companies could showcase their new solutions, etc. It also provides a channel between the companies and the politicians in the city hall, where they can bring forward their ideas or their complaints about municipal bureaucracy or whatever it is. So this channel is very valuable for the business sector. And the third thing is the possibility to design common innovation and demonstration projects. If there are promising technologies that could be tested, the city could work as a test bed to provide users and an environment where these new technologies could be tested. And if they are fruitful, it could then be scaled up to the full city. So that we believe that this business cooperation has been very fruitful so far.
Great, thank you. And then over to Copenhagen. Lykke, please, the screen and mic are yours.
Thank you. I have two examples of small local partnerships, or maybe not small. We have an energy partnership with some of the biggest landlords in the city who are working together with us and our utility to reduce the energy consumption in their buildings. We are providing them with data from our utility about their energy consumption, data that they would normally not have access to. And then we are together with them putting up goals about how much they should be reducing energy consumption in their building. And it has really proven a very successful way of collaborating because it's a win-win situation. We get them to reduce and they get access to data that they can also use in order to save money in the maintenance costs in their buildings. So it's a win-win situation. The other partnership that we are working on now is targeting the social housing in the city and the most energy consuming parts of the housing, where we are working with local neighborhood regeneration projects to target these buildings and have partnerships for retrofitting of these buildings, supporting them with public money in their work, but at the same time involving the local community in the development of how these things should how energy consumption, how energy production and so on has a climate effect, and how they can actually also be a part of it. And I think this is also one of the things that we will take on further out into the next step about looking at consumer-based emissions, where we will then actually have an opportunity to use some of the experiences from that. So both on a small and a large scale, it's really good to have these partnerships.
Excellent, thank you. It seems that many of the topics are common, I would say. Partnerships in energy, for instance, also partnerships with businesses and the learning from kind of both sides with the city together. And this is kind of bringing us forward to the next question. To continue with the theme of cooperation, we can zoom out kind of more to the international level for a moment. And keeping in mind that tackling the climate crisis requires the global society to move further and faster than before. There's certainly need for international cooperation. And the next question comes in two parts for the panelists. So firstly, if you could please share your views on what possibilities you see for cities in acting together as engines of change to build a climate-friendly future in the international arenas. And then secondly, what lessons can the Nordic capitals share to other cities? And what can the Nordic capitals learn from other cities, for instance, in the US? Would be great to hear your thoughts on this too, if possible. Again, brief answers is something that I'm hoping for, and we can start with Oslo this time and then go to Reykjavik, Stockholm, Copenhagen and Helsinki. So first to Audun and Oslo.
Okay, thank you. I think there is a lot for us to learn from cooperating, and I think that the cooperation between cities, municipalities is completely different from the climate negotiations on a national level, where everyone is trying to safeguard their own interests, while cities and municipalities love to share and brag about what they're doing. So it's very fruitful in that way. And I like to mention one example. We in Oslo are working towards fossil-free and zero-emission construction sites. So we need to get hold of, to buy, purchase large machinery, excavators, and so on that are not in ordinary serial production yet. So we're working together with C40 on something called Clean Construction Forum to share experiences and develop policies on this. And it's also very useful for us to join up with other cities, such as New York City, and send a clear signal to the market that this type of machinery, electric, large excavators, other types of construction machinery, will be in demand in the years to come. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And Reykjavik, please.
Yes, thank you. Well, what we have been doing here, if we're looking internationally, it has been extremely important for us to be a part of like the Global Covenant of Mayors, to be part of some international system actually to learn from, but also very quick on that it is for anyone in the audience to thinking about where to start. And it's good to have similar town or city than yourself. For example, we have been looking to a city in Sweden or a town that is at the same latitude as we. So and they have a lot of cyclists and use of public transport and similar weather and darkness as we have in Reykjavik, and that is in Umeå in North Sweden. So that is, how can you say it? You can have a kind of benchmark with a similar city as yourself. But we have also been looking for Copenhagen to be carbon neutral or carbon neutral by 2025. That was a benchmark for us to claim or say that we were going to be climate neutral in 2040. That actually gave us the courage that we could show how to go into that path. And also like Oslo is doing by electrifying the construction sites, we have been looking into that as well. So we are looking at how other cities are doing things. But of course, we are a smaller administration than both Oslo and Copenhagen. So we have been working with the Nordic Innovation, with just a project that is named Nordic Transition Partnership for Climate Neutral Cities by 2030. And that is a focus project for smaller cities and towns in the Nordics that is extremely learning for us as well. But you also asked about how about American cities, right? And well, for my kind of view, I don't forget the moment. I was so lucky to be attending COP23 in Bonn in 2017 after the presidential elections. And there, American cities and companies had a special place outside of the COP. And they just said, we are still in. And actually, that was such an amazing moment that you have control of some kind of aspects in your city and your town and within your company. So in my mind, that was very learningful for me and a really benchmark on how you can look into fighting the climate crisis.
Thank you. Thank you for those remarks. Next, over to Stockholm, please.
Yes, Stockholm is also a member of many of these international networks, C40 cities being one. We also have the Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance, the CNCA, which most of our cities is a member of. There we work with several cities in what is called a Game Changer Fund projects. This is a fund being possible through American philanthropic foundations, actually. So this is something quite new to us. We normally work with government climate funding or European money. So we have projects running here. We have one on mobility hubs together with Minneapolis, for instance. We have one on biochar with Boulder, Colorado. That is 2 examples. And this is a great opportunity to work very concretely with solutions, how it works in different contexts, how it is transferable from one city to another. So those are just a couple of examples that we're working with.
Excellent, thank you. And next up we have Copenhagen. Please, the screen and mic are yours.
Yeah, I mean, we again are also a member of many of these organizations, as also Stockholm said. But I think would like to mention the work that I've been doing with a number of US cities. Among them is New York. We've been working with New York on climate change adaptation since 2015 and have helped actually New York develop some of the measures that are now being worked on as a follow-up on the events that happened this summer with Hurricane Henry and Ida. So that is really crucial, how we can actually take some of the experience that we are having from one small city and take it into a much bigger city. We've also had work with Washington, D.C., with Houston and with Boston. So we are actually working with cities, not just as part of C40, which is also a very key part of our network, but also bilaterally. And I think that's also bringing some new perspectives to the collaboration because you get an inside understanding of what goes on in the city and can help in that way. So I think it's been really fruitful for both parts. We are also learning from working with New York and bringing stuff back home that we can use in Copenhagen. Even though many see us as being in the Nordic countries as being far ahead in many of these things, there's still a lot for us to learn out in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. And next to Helsinki, please.
Thank you. As time is our biggest enemy when we are fighting a climate change, I think, the key to success and key to win this battle is to copy with pride and copy as much as possible. And that's what we have been doing. So, for example, we have been copying the best ideas to increase the number of the cyclists from Copenhagen. So thank you, Copenhagen. And from Oslo, we have copied, they have, an excellent system how they are doing a program for the climate. So we have copied many ideas from the climate budget system from Oslo. And I think that, if we want to fight the climate change, we have to do it. And what we can share for others, at least, the heating is a big challenge for us. And last year we organized together with many partners and supporting cities. We organized a Helsinki Energy Challenge where we were looking for solutions and innovative ideas to heat the city without burning fossil fuels, without burning biomass, without burning basically anything. And actually, as an example, what we can learn from cities from United States, actually the idea for this challenge competition was stealed or copied or learned from the city of New York, because the city of New York has been organizing this kind of a challenge competition, and our previous mayor, got an idea from New York City, and because of that, he launched this competition, which was, a huge success, and now we are sharing all the results again, with everybody.
Excellent, thank you. I think all in all, this round demonstrated in an excellent way how cooperation can benefit many parties, depending on, or actually not depending on whether you come from a big or a smaller city. There's usually something to learn, and copying with pride, that's actually a very nice way to put it, so that we can all move forward. Okay, thank you for this round. I think it might be a good time for some questions from the audience. If we have some questions in the chat box, and Lotta has kindly promised to pick some of them from there. So yeah, please, Lotta, I'll hand over to you.
Hello, we got multiple great questions here. I'm going to start one with Stephanie, to our keynote speaker on electric cars, especially regarding accommodating the electric cars in New York City and charging extra to have a spot in the garages. So if Stephanie, you're still there, can you comment if there's any plans to regulate New York City garages regarding accommodating electric cars?
So I did see that question come through in the chat, and I appreciate the person who asked that question. I am not aware of the city taking specific steps yet to regulate private garages to encourage the adoption of electric vehicles, but I will certainly bring this feedback back to the city and others that I'm working with to figure out ways to see what we can do to continue to encourage the adoption of electric vehicles in New York City.
Thank you. And next up, we have a question about implementing congestion pricing in New York City, but in general in all the cities, and how we can design policies to reduce car usage without provoking a counterproductive backlash, because these congestion prices seem to be bringing out some angry people as well. So any thoughts and experiences there, or even talking about car-free city centers, and if that is a possibility. For example, Brussels has been doing this.
Well, perhaps I can start, since I mentioned we have a congestion charge since 2006. And of course, it was very controversial when it was proposed. If people are asked, do you want to pay more to enter with your car? They say, no, of course not. But if you looked at the simulations that was done before, and then at the evaluation afterwards, it was exactly as the researchers said it would be. And that is the people pay a price, yes, but they also get a shorter travel time and a more pleasant environment. And we had a trial period for 6 months where people got to try this in practice. And after that, there was a referendum and people voted in favor of keeping the system. So that is the lesson, is that if you just trust the experts and then let people try it out, then it could be a success.
If there's no more comments on that issue, there's been a question about cooperation between cities, which I believe the panelists did address, but also on how do we encourage and assist countries who are not participating or who are not setting ambitious enough goals on how to work together. So how to encourage more international cooperation.
Okay, I see Lykke's hand has been raised, so please.
Yeah, I think that we need to use some of the organizations we have. It can be the United Nations, it can be the European Union, it can be organizations like C40 and ICLEI that can actually also go beyond. I know from C40 that they also have an ambitious to reach out to 1,000 other cities, even though C40 is a small organization and does not have the intention to become a big organization. It still has this idea of reaching out and having an impact in cities that are non-C40 cities. So I think we can do a lot on both a large and a small scale.
Thank you. And then there's a question on the individual side, on what people can do as an individual, more than recycling and composting and using public transportation. And there's also a comment under this on maybe directing it more on the political change and side on that. But any comments on what individuals can do, and also tying up with Copenhagen on the consumption-based emission reduction targets? So what can individuals do more?
Okay, please feel free to start, Ren.
Yes, thank you. Well, I always believe when you are thinking about doing something on the individual base, then you have to think about what actually, because this is such a huge task. You don't know where to start actually. So you have to start with yourself. What are you ready to do? You know, some people are ready to be political, to be elected, and then there are some other people who just want to recycle the waste and so on. So I think there is you have to decide for yourself where your baseline would be and work on from that one. Maybe just a general answer to the question, but that is maybe the right thing or the best thing for yourself to start with a complex task like this.
Thank you. And Kaisa-Reetta, please.
Yes, I think that the biggest thing the individual actually can do, and I know this is not the answer you would like to hear, but I think that it is really to give a support for those difficult political decisions. As you know, earlier said, for example, when you try to reduce the number of the cars in the cities, it's like, you know, you are touching to the bomb or something which will explode on your hand immediately, because it's you know, people are so angry. And I think that, you know, if you are really supporting that kind of, you know, ideas, you should, you know, let others to know, because normally we have a very small but very vocal group, you know, being against of that kind of a political decision. And you know, it is very important that we have also, you know, those people who are supporting this kind of policies, you know, to be active and say that actually, yeah, we support this. Because, you know, giving that kind of support for the difficult political decisions, it is extremely important. And you know, I think, you know, that it can be much more impactful than, you know, composting your waste or, you know, trying to reduce a plastic.
Great, thank you. I'm conscious of time, and I think at this point it's time for a little bit of a wrap up. So this has been such an enriching conversation. Thank you to all panelists and viewers watching the event and commenting on the chat. To me, all in all, the discussion and the event really brings home the message that cities have a key role to play in climate action, both in implementing solutions and inspiring others to act too. So for instance, finding the solutions with businesses, encouraging win-win solutions, using public procurement and other practices and approaches and projects together with the stakeholders to promote action on many frontiers. I'd also like to thank the event organizers warmly, so the Consulate Generals of Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. Thank you. And on that note, I'd pass the screen and mic to Lotta Jessen. Lotta, over to you.
Thank you, Tatu. And on my behalf as well, thank you to our keynote speaker, Stephanie, our panelists and our moderator, and of course, our wonderful audience. I wish you all a great rest of your day or night, and hope that we have left you inspired to keep solving the climate challenges that face us. Thank you.